Okay, we are live, and good morning to everyone watching us from around the world. This is the Sport Events and Tourism Summit 2021, the first edition of it. And today we'll be looking at developing Ghana's sports tourism industry. And I have with me two of my panel members, Owuraku and Mr. Malcolm. And so I'll let them introduce themselves. So I'll start with Mr. Malcolm. Please, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, hi, Owuraku, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Malcolm, I'm good. And you?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, also, thanks for this opportunity. My name is Malcolm Frazier Appeadu. I'm the Marketing and Sales Manager for the Ghana Tourism Development Company.
And hello, everyone. Good morning to you, Mr. Malcolm, and then to Oswell. And to everyone viewing this or listening to every part of the world that you're joining us from. My name is Owuraku Ampofo, as also rightly stated. I work with the Multimedia Group. I'm a sports journalist and focus a lot on data analysis and trends, and just trying to make sense of the numbers to be able to get insights in sports. But today, we're extending the boundaries a bit and seeing how Ghana can gain when it comes to tourism, and whether really there's a market in the sports industry that can be tapped into.
Thank you. So I think we'll just start with that's the first question on what the challenges are. So I'll take it from both perspectives, both from the state and tourism aspect and from the media side. So I'll start with Mr. Malcolm.
Okay. Yeah, thank you also. Thank you again. Probably let me give you a bit of a background to what we do here. I mean, I work with the Ghana Tourism Development Company. It's a state agency. We are one of the 14 agencies under the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. And basically, we have other agencies like the Ghana Tourism Development, the Ghana Tourism Authority, the Museums and Monument Board, and those are the agencies. Now, for us, as the Ghana Tourism Development Company, we are set up as a limited liability company. So we are not like any other agency who gets subvented by the state. We have to generate our own resources. And one of the things that we looked at is sports tourism. I mean, when it comes to the tourism sector, the regulator is the Ghana Tourism Authority, who regulates hotels. I mean, there's a new law which gives them the power to regulate tourist sites and also restaurants, chop bars, and all that. Now, we as an entity, we are into infrastructure development and investment. So we have some number of investment in some hospitality enterprises like the Duty Free Shop, Accra City Hotel. We have tourist sites that we manage, the Asemanso Slave River site. We have the Big Tree, and we also have a partnership with the Akwamu Palace, or let me say the Akwamu Traditional Council, where we manage their Palace Museum and a couple of other ones that are coming up. Eventually, we also do commercial activities like car rentals and other things. Now, we looked at the space and we realized that there are a couple of things we could do in terms of diversifying our product in terms of the tourism product that we had. So typically, you have the normal tourism activity where people travel to various tourist sites, be it heritage, environment, nature, whatever. They just travel there to see, on a sightseeing, to learn, to experience some other feeling and all that. So we decided that, okay, we have a couple of things we needed to do looking at the sector, because tourism has a lot of areas. We have medical tourism, we have sports, what we are discussing now. Then there was something that we looked at. If you look at typically a country like Ghana, we have the Greenwich Meridian line, and we have the equator, which are the two lines that divide the world into the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, as well as the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So we looked at it and we realized that Ghana is strategically positioned. We have the Greenwich Meridian line, which passes through a number of countries, including Ghana, Burkina Faso, the UK, Spain, and other places. Then in Ghana, it passes directly through Tema. And in Tema, it passes through Hole 7, that is the Tema Country Golf Club, which has now been christened the Center of the World Golf Club. Then a few meters away from that line, which is the longitude 0, we also have another line we call the latitude 0, which is the equator. The intersection between those two lines is within Ghanaian's territorial waters. So for us as tourism people, we looked at it and said, okay, can we use this geophysical attribute to brand our country like the way other people have branded their countries? Like we have incredible India, amazing Malaysia. If we talk about some iconic structures across the world, you look at Paris, you talk about the Eiffel Tower, and I'm sure Owuraku knows what the Eiffel Tower did with the introduction of Messi and all that. You know. So I mean, when they talk about the Statue of Liberty, you talk about New York and some countries and other things. So in Ghana, we realized that we have some geophysical attribute that we could use to brand our country. That's why we come out with the term Center of the World. Then we started with this golf tournament. So I think it was a coincidence of facts. One, because we wanted to diversify the tourism portfolio, and two, because we realized that the Greenwich Meridian line passes through Tema, which is Hole 7. And that place where it passes is a golf course. So we decided that we need to do a number of projects. But as part of that project, let's come up with this golf tournament where we will use to engage stakeholders of this particular project that we are trying to do. And that's how come we birthed the Ghana Center of the World Golf Tournament, which we did the first edition in 2018. The next edition was in 2019. Last year, we couldn't do it because of COVID. And this year, we've had a third edition. And fortunately for us, we had UMB and a couple of people who came on as sponsors. So I just give you the trajectory or the journey of what I call, or what we call, the Ghana's foremost sports tourism brand and event, which is the Ghana Center of the World Golf Tournament. So I just want to put the discussion into perspective. So for us as a tourism practitioner and a marketer, this is where we come out directly to be able to do something that we say, this is a sports activity, but we are using it to promote tourism. I don't know whether you want me to go to the challenges, or maybe Owuraku will come in with a couple of maybe initial comments before I come on to some of the comments that or some of the challenges that we have enumerated of.
Owuraku, should he continue the challenges, or you want to come in from the media?
Yeah, I think you can continue.
Okay.
Okay, I think for us in tourism, the challenge is there hasn't been that collaboration, or let me say the discussion between the two sectors. And for us in tourism, we think that we need the sports people more than probably maybe they need us. But you see, when you look at the topic, or if you look at the subject very well, you realize that we need each other, because at where one will start the activity and it will continue. So for example, let me give you an example. Ghana is hosting the 2023 All-African Games. There's a number of infrastructures projects that are going to go up. Now, when those infrastructure goes up, what happens? Somebody needs to make use of those infrastructure. I mean, we've talked through it very well, and I'm sure that's why the president says that when the stadiums are constructed, it is going to be used for a sports university or something like that, which helps to let me say, put a proper return on that particular investment. So that, I mean, we've read about cases where all the stadiums that were built in South Africa for the 2010 World Cup, they say they become white elephants. There are problems with people, with communities or with states on how they can maintain those structures and also how they use them to their benefit. So there are those things. So I'm sure that that this is why maybe the president of the state has thought about it, that, okay, after we finish with this infrastructure for the All-African Games, it has to revert into a sports university, because a sports-loving country like Ghana, we only had, let me say, the Winneba Sports College, which is at the University of Education, Winneba. So if we get a sports-focused university, I think it's a very good thing. Now, as I say, one of the challenges is collaboration. I think there is not that deliberate collaboration between the two sectors, that is tourism and sports. I mean, we had somebody at the helm of the tourism authority who himself is also a sports person. So he's the Division I League board chairman. He used to be the vice chairman, that I'm talking about, Mr. Kosi Adiman, who is also the vice chairman of the Black Stars Management Committee. So if you remember 2 years or 3 years ago, Rico, I'm sure you can remember, there was this collaboration between the GFA and the Ghana Sports Authority during the MTN FA Cup, where all the players came out, they played in Tamale, all the players came up in Smoke and in other things. And I'm sure there were also other games that were played at the Indian Sports Stadium as part of bridging that gap. But in terms of looking at the collective as a sports ministry and the sports, the tourism ministry, there hasn't been that collaboration, even though there have been a number of sports mega events that have taken place that had tourism potential, but maybe we didn't look at it deliberately. I mean, I'm talking about the 2008 African Cup of Nations. Even before that, 2010, there was a joint hosting between us and Nigeria and all that. There was also the African under 20, Owuraku, is it under 20 youth tournament, also in Ghana, where it brought up some of our infrastructure. I mean, before that, we didn't even have a stadium with seating. We were sitting on concrete slabs. It was during that time before we brought rubber seating, or let me say proper seating, to the various stadiums that you could say Accra Sports Stadium is a 40-seater or a 50-seater, or Kumasi is a 60-seater. That's how it comes. So most of these projects, or let me say events, bring about some direct benefit in terms of your infrastructure, improving your infrastructure, and also enhancing your stadia and other facilities that you use. So the first thing I will look at is first about collaboration. There hasn't been that collaboration. And two, we also don't drill down the numbers. Like, I mean, I'm sure, I'm happy Owuraku is here. We don't drill down the numbers in terms of, okay, this activity that we are going to have, these are the returns that we're going to have in terms of direct investment to the sports itself, then to other allied areas like tourism, like hotels that people are going to like, hospitality, restaurants, transport, telecommunication, and even generally or collectively about nation building. I'm not sure we sat down to do all those analyses. So I think that this discussion and the further other ones that are going to come after this are going to put that issues into perspective so that we can deliberately sit down and have this discussion. So I want to go back to the challenges again: the lack of collaboration, the lack of, or let me say, not having that deliberate focus in terms of drilling down the numbers, in terms of what these events return to various sectors, such as tourism. And also, you realize that there's usually not a thorough, or let me say, a thought-through process of the various events that we get ourselves involved. So, I mean, these are the things that I can see as challenges for now. And I'm sure after Owuraku comes in, I can come back with some other details.
So Owuraku can come in now.
Okay, good morning once again. And I think Mr. Malcolm has really wrapped it up in terms of the main problem, and that has been, a lack of communication over the years and collaboration, because to be able to achieve something like this on a national scale, you do need all stakeholders to play their role. And so I would just put together some slides that let me just try and go through them, and trying to share my screen right now. Could you allow screen sharing so that I'll be able to? make it accessible. Are you able to figure it out? Also, you're muted.
Yeah, I'll be able to figure it out. Sorry. Try again.
Yeah, it's working now.
Okay.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I term it as, you know, changing the tourism game in Ghana with sports, and I do believe that in the first place, sports tourism, it's a big industry, and I'll be sharing exactly, you know, how big it is and how successful it's been for some other countries, and you know how impactful it's been in other parts of the world. But first off, one may ask, what is sports tourism that everyone seems to be talking about? And in simple terms, it's just giving someone the opportunity to move from one place to the other, just to watch or participate in a sporting event. And so if I decide today to go to Ivory Coast because of a tennis tournament, that tournament for Ivory Coast would fall under sports tourism. And because that's the reason why I went to sports tourism. So how do we get Ghana to be able to get more people to move into the country for that specific purpose? Now, everybody knows that sports sells. We live in, you know, Ghana, and I'm sure you don't need a lot of details as to how much Ghanaians love their football. And basically everyone lives and breathes football. And it's not just about the love. We've seen a lot of success throughout the years as well. So many legends who are celebrated, not just in Ghana, but across Africa and on a global scale. So here's the case where we have, you know, products, that's these athletes and these legends who are celebrated across. So that means that there is general interest in them. So why is Ghana not able to capitalize on this and, you know, gain more from the sports tourism industry? And here's a short outline of what I'll be talking about. And that's looking at how other countries are winning from sports tourism. And then we'll look at the Ghana situation. And then we'll later focus on the future of sports tourism and what possibly could be done to improve, you know, the situation. So let's look at the global sports tourism industry and how huge it is. And these are just some 3 different statistics to really amplify how much Ghana is missing out on. Now, in 2014, there was a report in India showing that the sports tourism industry was equating to $600 billion. That was on an annual basis. And that's the global number 7 years ago. And 2 years later, in 2016, the numbers increased, this time from billion to trillion, where we had $1.41 trillion. And it was expected that pre-COVID, of course, COVID has changed a lot of things, but pre-COVID, the numbers were supposed to improve drastically to 5.72 trillion by 2021. And we've not really had new numbers as to how COVID has impacted it, but it's definitely not going to go, you know, way to the back in terms of the numbers. It would still be in and around the 1.41 trillion, if anything, because of the trajectories and the numbers gained so far. And then there's also more statistics to prove how huge the industry is. From the World Sports Tourism Show, there was a 10% of the global tourism industry. When you do look at the whole tourism industry around the world, sports tourism is contributing to 10%, and that is resulting to 15 million international arrivals every year. And what's interesting here is actually the growth rate, because at the short term, you do see an increase of 6% of that every single year. So now we've established that the global sports industry is a huge one and is in fact enormous. So the question is, why is Ghana not tapping into this? Now, if you look at Ghana's situation, it looks a bit dire. And that's because majority of the visits in the country have been for business purposes. And you can see the numbers from the past 4 years, where 39.8% of visits in Ghana have been business related. Now, the numbers for sports do not look encouraging at all, as it's just been 1%. And that was actually just in 2019. And I'll be giving you the reason why there was an increase in 2019. But then the average was actually 0.75% annually since 2016. Now, if you do the comparative analysis of the various tourism sectors that we do have, sports was ranked the lowest. So you do have sports in terms of the interest in sports being at an all-time high in Ghanaians, but then the tourism opportunity is at the lowest. And so there's a clear disparity between the interest that Ghanaians have and then the amount of work that's been put in or what has been done so far when it comes to tourism. So let's look at a future with sports tourism. We do know that there's a gap. People are interested in sports in Ghana, but then too much is not being done so far. And you remember earlier in the slides, I started by saying that, when I was doing the comparative analysis, that in 2019, we did see a 1% interest in terms of the visits to Ghana, 39% being the business purposes. Let me just go back to that slide. And 1% in 2019, that was the highest in the last 4 or 5 years. That was in 2019. And that was because of one of the points here, that's hosting competitions. And if you remember, we did have a women's competition, that's the African Women's Cup, between 2018 and then 2019 January. And we did see an improvement in the tourism numbers for Ghana. Now, it wasn't a huge jump, but it did give us an idea of what hosting competitions can do. Now, over the years, we've seen some attempts, and we've seen some attempts at trying to host competitions across from golf, as Mr. Malcolm did say. There was one that was recently organized, and I remember playing a report on that on Joy News. And then we've had, Ghana in the future, in the next couple of years, hosting the All African Games in 2023. And then also we remember all the way back in 2008, when the country hosted Cannes 2008, where it was incredible. I'm sure if you did, or if you're old enough at that time, you would have seen the buzz, the craze, and just the whole feeling of having a competition in town. And obviously you could see a rise in the number of travels. If not for anything, the countries involved in the competition traveled into the country, and business was booming. Everything was enjoyable, because when sports does well, everything else does well as well. Sorry, we've also seen competitions such as the swimming, where we had a Kana Zone 2 competition just about a year ago, and other countries came in as well. But it feels like it's in bits and pieces when you look at competitions, and there isn't really a unified effort to be able to host competitions consistently in different sports. Now, I say in different sports because usually everything that, when we speak sports and the focus from government and association, a larger chunk of the national pie is dedicated to football, which is understandable because there's large interest. But let's not forget that when you're doing tourism, it's not just about Ghana and what Ghana is interested in. When you do football that only Ghana is interested in, only Ghanaians would go. But you could extend your market audience or your market share by doing other sports where it's really growing at an alarming rate. An example is e-gaming. E-gaming is big across the world and is generating billions, in economies in Europe and all that. But it's not really being, patronized in Ghana at the moment. So if you are thinking Ghana, organizing a competition in esports would not be in your plans, your short-term or long-term plans. But then when you look at the market audience outside, you're really missing out on something big. Is there a possibility Ghana can host the next E-World Cup or the next E-African Cup? Those are the things that we have to start looking at, not just limiting ourselves to what Ghanaians are interested in. Let me go back to the top and talk about football museums. Now, the first one that comes to mind is the German Football Museum, and is located in Dortmund. And what you do see in that museum is basically dedicated to the German national team. Now, when you go in there, you would see how they won their various World Cups, with their latest being Mario Götze, when he won the 2014 World Cup for them against Germany in extra time with his goal. Now, the boot that he wore, in its dirty state, it wasn't washed. It's been put in a glass in that museum, and people are paying to go and watch that. You'd be able to see some of their successes from the 20th century, and actually wear, virtual reality glasses where you feel as if you are in the stadium. Now, this takes a lot of investment, but one thing is certain: people would be interested. I'm 24 years. I've never seen the Black Stars win a trophy. Ghana has won 4 African Cup of Nations. Is it possible I could have had a chance to feel a part of it? If there was a football museum showing some of the jerseys, the trophies, the medals, how Ghana won these trophies, would I be interested? Yes. And I think my yes represents a large majority of Ghanaians. And that's because if you are anything younger than 40, you haven't seen any of these successes. Now, you talk about the German Football Museum, and in the first year of opening, there were 200,000 visits. Now, if each person was paying around, £10 or €10 to enter, you should have an idea of the millions that they are generating from this. So it takes a lot to invest in these projects, but one thing that you are certain is that there is large interest, and you would be getting your money. And it's not just about Ghana. Other African countries, other European countries would be interested in a football museum in Ghana about the Black Stars, about our successes, about how we got the name Black Stars and all that, the history. Antique sells, history sells. And so that's also one area that we can look at as a country. You look at club stadiums and the mentality of our clubs. You can see in the bottom corner, I have a simple note about the mentality that sports is not just about what happens on the pitch. The most important is what actually happens off the pitch and how you market it. You look at teams across Europe, basketball, football, everything is built outside its stadium in terms of the hysteria, the interest. And you go to stadiums, and it's not even about the seats. It's about what is inside the stadium, the franchise shops. You go into some of these clubs, they have a mini room where you'd see some of the trophies, some of the medals, you'd be able to take pictures. And so the stadium operates on a 24/7 basis. And you don't just go there to watch matches, but you go there to be able to get some products and interact and get closer to the teams. I think it's time that our various associations, in the sports industry, the sports sector, start thinking about other means beyond just the game. How would we be able to generate interest, even if there is no action in the sport going on at this point? And then another point is also sports festivals, where, as I stated earlier, you want to generate interest from outside Ghana. Could we possibly have, something about motor riding? You see a lot of people riding these motors, showing skills. Can we have a festival like that the whole of the world would want to see each year? And then something about statues as well. We have Abedi Pele, who is celebrated globally. If a statue was in Ghana, it would be such a monumental thing that you could also see interest from Europe and other African countries trying to just come around and take a picture with this statue as well. And then auctions. One area that I feel we haven't explored at all in Ghana here. We've had so many historic moments. You look at Azuma Nelson, and we've had various icons, Asamoah Gyan, that historic goal that he scored in the Ghana's World Cup against Czech Republic. Is it possible that the jersey that he was selling at that point could actually be auctioned across the world? And there could be a bidding war, and the money that is gotten from that could be invested in the sports tourism industry. So these are all ideas as to how we can improve our sports tourism. And I like the point by Mr. Malcolm, and that's how I'll be concluding. It's all about collaboration. What we have now is the various sectors, the government, the association, and then we have the tourism industry, and we have the media and the various clubs. Everyone is, operating in silos and just mini collaborations. But can we have a bigger conversation and look at the bigger picture? That how can we plan that in the next 5-6 years, we want tourism to become sports tourism to move from, the 12th in the tourism sector rank in Ghana and come into the top 3? What are some of the steps that we can take? And once you have a long-term plan, you're able to break it down and look at the investments that you have and how you could probably recoup some of that money. Because at the end of the day, if sports is doing well, if we do build these infrastructures, remember, it's going to affect the economy. There would be more employment. If you build a museum, people have to work there. If you do an auction, people have to work for it. If you build a club stadium, which has various attractions, people have to work there, and even people in and around the facilities as well. And so if we have the sports tourism business booming, we would see more travels, we would see a boost in the economy as well. So there's a bigger reason for us to continue to have these conversations and actually start implementing some of these tourist sites when it comes to sports. So yeah, thank you. My name is Owuraku Ampofo, and so those are my initial remarks on how we can help improve the sports industry here.
Okay, thank you. That was very, very insightful, I would say. Thank you. So looking going forward, I think another issue I was thinking it could be is about the different sports we have. It seems there is a problem with how they sell, how it's being sold. I want to know if there has been any change in the way it's being made public, especially with ticketing, for instance. Other countries have a whole website. You can easily buy the tickets. You can just go for this event and, So I want to know if there is any way, has there been any way, especially with regards to athletics, we have GUSA, the Ghana University students. Has there been a way whereby they decided to make it public, like in the US have the NCAA and the other sports? Rick, we can start though.
Okay. So in terms of the sports sector and e-ticketing, we've seen the Ghana Football Association try a few methods, and actually we had information about last month that next season they'll be exploring the possibility of e-ticketing and buying tickets online. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that was followed by some of the actions and footages that we saw during the big games in the Ghana Premier League, where fans were charging their way past police officials, and people still queuing before games and all that. So we'll see how that goes in terms of future developments. But speaking of the GUSA games as well, I think the last edition there was an improvement in the media coverage, and what they're trying to do now is improve the digital space. They do have a YouTube channel now, and they have a Facebook account as well that they stream some of the videos. And so there have been massive strides in terms of entering the digital space, in the market, and making some of these footages accessible to the people as well. But I think that more can be done. And with such an event such as the GUSA Games, it doesn't have to be just one media house. Government should be pushing for 10, 12 media houses to be covering this, because if you look at our athletics history, most of our runners come through these games. And even Benjamin Azamati, who recently represented the country at the Olympic Games, he was at GUSA just a couple of years ago. So it's a good avenue, it's a good platform, but there is more to be done. And when these guys go through GUSA and they become superstars, how are they coming back to help the games? How are they coming back to elevate the level? How are they coming back to make it more memorable? These are all steps that I think that we would also have to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. From the same question, if the government is supposed to, handle these things, how does it trickle down to the other agencies, other associations get involved from travel agencies? Because they will be the ones who really sell the package to the other interested participants.
Yeah. Also, are you talking in terms of the sports activities, or you're talking about in terms of the tourism packages?
All together, both the package itself and also the games. But it seems that it's always been limited to the associations who actually deal with it, and anybody who comes in to really be, a private individual or someone. So there have been different steps or improvements on how to get these packages done?
Yes, I think that when it comes to how these packages are done and how the various sporting activities are marketed or branded, I think a lot has to do with the various, let me say, bodies, regulatory bodies or like associations. For example, the DFA, the Ghana Athletics Association, the Ghana Boxing Authority, and those other people. Because I don't know how some of these things can be, let me say, regulated. I mean, because, for example, if you do e-ticketing or you do advanced ticketing, which guarantees you or guarantees the various clubs or agencies or associations some amount of revenue even before the activity starts. For example, we are going to go into a new football season. Assuming the various teams are going to sell advanced tickets, they will get some money even before the game starts. And they can use those monies in various, signing of players, doing all these teams are doing their projects in their various places, House of Folk, Kotoko, and all that. So I think that it basically, one, it depends on the various associations like the DFA, as well as the clubs themselves. Because if you're a House of Folk and they are going to play a game like with Kotoko and people are asking, like a week to the game, people are asking for advance tickets and they can't get it. And because of that, they go and break a stadium gate, for example. You can imagine. Also, on a Monday, you also look at the number of people. I mean, I've seen numbers on Start Times app, where has in Kotoko, you see about 170,000 people on the app. Assuming everybody pays 9 cedis. That's a daily package. You can imagine the kind of money that's being made. So I think it depends on one, it depends on the clubs, depends on the associations, and maybe overall what government policies that they put in place to ensure that some of these things are done and done well. But I think when it also comes to where Owuraku ended, in terms of the collaboration between the agencies that are supposed to ensure that we derive the maximum benefit from sports tourism events, I think that government has to take the lead. There should, now we have an LOC, which is more geared towards ensuring that the infrastructures are up, and also to be ensured that when the game starts, in terms of movement, communication, and everything, there is hassle-free, there's no glitch, there's no hitch in terms of how the events are organized and how they come on. There are no light or power outages in various centers where the events are going to take place. So, but when it comes to the other thing, that's what I'm saying, that we need to have a very comprehensive discussion. And we in the tourism sector, we have started with the discussion with our sister agency, which is the Ghana Tourism Authority, for us to look at the 2023 All-African Games. Let's look at what other countries like Algeria and other places were able to do with their events. And also we ensure that we can minimize the challenges and maximize the benefit. And the challenges are, one, as I said, how you do with the infrastructure after you are done. When we got the rights to host this tournament, there was no COVID. Now there's COVID, so whatever expenditure that you did, COVID is going to triple it or it's going to double it or whatever. So we need to look at it and start having a discussion. And from our end, as I said, we have started a discussion with our sister agency, the Ghana Tourism Authority. We're going to extend that discussion to the broader stakeholder group, which will include the media, which include yourself, Oswell, who we are in the travel trade, which includes, let me say, the various hotels and agencies. Because look, one of the problems in this industry, and I'm sure when the All-African Games comes in 2023, and if you don't tackle it, which is going to be very, very obvious, is service delivery. We deliver services in the various hotels, and I'm sure we all have concerns in the various hotels, restaurants, pubs, and all that. Like you ask for something, they don't have it, they bring another thing, and how they go about it. All these are issues. So service delivery will be the heart of this thing, because after you've delivered the sporting event, people will still have memories that they want to visit. For example, I was in South Africa during the 2010 World Cup, and I remember the places that we visited, and I still have mental pictures of the places that we went to and the experiences that so I have that particular experience or feeling towards South Africa. And I always wish to go back again, you understand, because of the experience that I had during the World Cup. So I think that all the stakeholders, I mean, those in the tourism sector, those in the sports sector, media, travel trade, those in service delivery, educational institutions where we do the training of the people who do the direct service delivery are supposed to be engaged in all this activity to ensure that we can sell a brand, a Ghana brand in 2023 that the rest of Africa can come and see. Because don't forget, what we are going to sell in 2023 is not your typical touristic product where people come and go and visit Cape Coast Castle or Mina Castle. You know, the people who we appeal to. We need to ensure that these people who are coming are our brothers and sisters who are on the same continent. So those things might not appeal to them. So we need to understand what will appeal to them. Aside, because I mean, when the games are going on, there are days where maybe they are off days that they need to have a hospitality package where they travel or they visit some other tourist sites to have. But these are not Americans who are maybe interested in the heritage tourism where you take them to Cape Coast and Mina. So you need to identify what will interest them so that you can sell that particular package to them. So I think we are all involved in this.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm, sorry. So I think I'm missing the question. I wanted to ask if you mentioned something earlier about the sporting associate, the sports we have. So how do we start developing these sports to be, you know, lucrative and also to help the tourism sector?
Well, I think that we need to first off understand that you cannot develop sports if you only focus on one aspect of sports. Now, I say this because I understand there's so much interest in football, but it's time that we grow from that and understand that, look, although there's football, which is globally attractive, there are other sports which are also doing very well around the world as well. And essentially what that means is that we don't throw all our focus in terms of resources, finances, and administrative support to just football. And I say this because you look at how football is treated in the country, and you compare that to, let's say, the tennis team, Ghana's tennis team, which last month went for a Davis Cup in Egypt. And you wouldn't believe that the team had a match, and the Davis tournament is arguably the biggest tennis tournament that every player would want to play in, because that's how you play against the best in the world, and you improve your rank, and then you could possibly play in a slum. And Ghana had very good potential players, some coming in from the United States and all that. And so the players were ready, but guess what? The association only let the team travel on the night before the tournament. And it wasn't even a straight flight. Was it Morocco and Egypt? I think it's more of Morocco. I'm not getting the location right, but it was between Morocco and Egypt. And they ended up getting to, the tournament the same day that they were playing, and had to forfeit their first game. And so these are the adverse conditions that some aspects of the sport, athletes who play tennis, are facing. Meanwhile, let's face it, if the Black Stars were going to play the Africa Cup of Nations, there is no way that they would get to the tournament on the day that is starting. They would get there a couple of weeks before and be given preferential treatment in terms of everything. So why can't we just cut a part of the national pie? No one is saying that, abort football and throw your money elsewhere. But if they are saying that Ghana needs $25 billion for just football in the next 2 years for African Cup, the African Cup in 2021, and then the World Cup qualifies to the World Cup as well, then how much are we looking at for other sports? I'm not sure tennis even gets $1 million, or golf gets $1 million from government. So if we are getting all this money available for football, why not just cut it to 50% and really look at creative ways of cutting down some of the costs for football? Why do we have to, we've been playing football for over 60, 70 years. Why do we still have to rent hotels for the Black Stars and spend millions of dollars for accommodation when you can just take a loan and build something for them, where you would give parts of it to sponsors, and these sponsors would end up paying you back. And what you do is that you save money up front in future. So instead of spending millions at hotels, the team comes in and comes somewhere that you know you own and it's yours. And so I think first off, there has to be a spread of the national pie for sports, and specific development into these games as well. What is government really doing in terms of the youth in sports as well? I've spoken to some of the young guys in boxing and in golf, and there seems to be no communication from the association and even government as well. And you look at Ghana's most recent success in the Olympics, that was Samuel Techi in the boxing, and most of the things that he achieved on his own with a coach. And some of these things don't usually come out, but the government barely supported them when they were training and trying to get to the qualifiers. And what we see is that usually is the talent that these boys have that's accommodating for the gap in the lack of resources. And so I think that we need to have a deliberate plan and sit down and say that as a country, we have $20 million a year for sports. Which part is going to which sports, and what are we going to do to be able to develop the next star? What's the path for these athletes? And shift their attention to these different types of sports. And that's how we'll be able to attract interest from all across the world. Football is good, but what happens when football isn't as successful as it was anymore? Like what's happening to the Black Stars right now? We're still investing and the team isn't doing well. And so essentially that means that Ghana is not doing well in any sport on the global scale. So I think that we can, put our eggs in more baskets and alleviate a bit of the risk. And that way we improve other sports and we get more opportunities from there as well.
Thank you, Owuraku. Mr. Malcolm, you mentioned earlier on how there have been talks with the different stakeholders and associations. Has there been any way or any discussion with any of the associations to come up with different sports events that will boost the tourism industry?
Not, I think to some level, we've had some discussion with the Ghana Golfers Association because of what we are involved in. But I remember 2 years ago, we had a seminar. It was an African Sports Tourism Week. We had one of our colleagues from Nigeria who came to have the event, and we had the CEOs of the Ghana Tourism Development Company and the Ghana Tourism Authority there, together with Mr. Benunu Mensah, who is the chairman of the Ghana Olympic Committee, and a couple of other sports journalists there. And we tried to have that discussion. I mean, we had in that forum, we had a vivid presentation from Gough Wilson, who is a sports marketing guru in Ireland, to tell us about how Ireland has used sports tourism to boost their economy. So, but on that level, I'm sure that apart from that, we do not have any serious, or let me say, very deliberate discussion in terms of how we take this thing forward. That's what I'm saying, that from us as a tourism entity, we have started a discussion with our regulator that he has to stretch, or they have to stretch their hands towards the sports people. Then we have to have a discussion, because it's expedient that we do this discussion and this collaboration, especially that we have the 2023 All African Games coming up. There's no any other way we could go about it. We need to have that deliberate discussion and bring everybody on board and path the way forward. And that will help us in terms of how we get a very good return on investment in terms of the $200 million that we are going to spend to construct this stadium and other infrastructure that we're going to do run up to this particular tournament.
Yeah, thank you. So look, I'll start with you on this question on we start developing sustainable sports tourism sector.
Come again?
How do we start developing the sustainable sports tourism sector from your perspective as the media?
Well, I think the media usually barely creates something as big as this. What the media usually does is to drive whatever decisions are taken and, move these discussions forward and hold the leaders accountable if they do make promises for the sports industry. So I think everything really depends on an initial conversation where we really look at how huge the gap is in terms of, the sports industry and the level of interest and the amount of work that has to be done. And once the government, the tourism sector and, the various sports sectors, their leaders, their associations sit together and plan ways that we could, take steps. I've recently seen a waterfall being built in Adenta. It's a good initiative. I mean, that's something that Ghana is missing and would attract a lot of Ghanaians. But then again, who outside Ghana would come to Ghana because of a waterfall? I doubt. Everyone would probably go. If you don't have a waterfall, you maybe go to the US where they do have a whole water park that is not comparable to what we are building here in Adenta. So I then again come and say that we have to think global. What is it that we can do in Ghana that is unique to us, that would attract people from all over the world? And that is our achievements, our icons, our history, our moments, because we are the only ones who achieve that. And people are interested in that. So how do we make the most out of all these monumental stuff and be able to put them into actual material? And then we start benefiting from that. So the media can play a role, but only when they have the initial discussions and, a possible way forward that we know in the next 5 years, government says that it's going to build a football museum. And then the media would start asking questions. How do you plan to get that? What's the budget for it? How big is the museum going to be? And when it's built, of course, the media would be there again to be able to put the story out and let people know that there's actually a football museum, maybe somewhere in Ghana, and this is what would be there and all that. So I think the media is more of a supporting cast to this, but there has to be that moment where we come to realize that we have to start and, start making some really huge decisions.
So I go to Mr. Malcolm.
Okay, thank you, Oswald. I think on this call, I will differ a bit with Owuraku on it. I'm starting from where he left off. I mean, when you look at the football museum, it's a good thing. I mean, for me in tourism, we are always deliberate about everything we do. So for us, it's important. We take people there, especially sports lovers. But you can ask your group of people, like your other colleague journalists. Immediately we put out, or somebody puts out the idea that there's going to be a football museum. I'm sure you start asking about how much it's going to cost. The University of Ghana Sports Stadium has not been completed. Why are you using this money? I mean, the issue about the opportunity cost for the money will be discussed. I mean, when the 25 million budget for the Black Stars was put forward, the major critics or the height of the criticism came from sports journalists and football pundits and football journalists. But I thought that if you say you guys are a supporting cast, I don't believe on that particular score, the football journalists were a supporting cast. I mean, they were at the height of the criticism. But I think that if we have this deliberateness where we would decide to put about 25 million in an industry like football, I think for me, it was even woefully inadequate. Because let's look at the return on investment that we got for even the 2010 World Cup. Was it about 11 million? I mean, when we got to the quarters, it was about $11 million. Even that one was the direct return. What about the tourism potential or the branding of Ghana that was put on international networks, media networks? Were we able to quantify that, to add it to the 11 billion to know that this was the total return on investment? So I think on the football museum, yes, it's an idea I support, but whether our football stakeholders, especially sport journalists and football journalists, will take it or will accept it is another issue. Now, let's go to your main question. You know, for us to develop a sustainable sports tourism industry, and for me, as I say, for tourism to thrive, you need to look at, tourism has two sectors, the domestic and international. And where you get a lot of resources or where you get a lot of revenue is the international side. But you can't develop a very enviable tourism sector without developing the domestic. So how do we do with the domestic? For example, the way we started, at the bedrock of everything is infrastructure. Infrastructure in sporting activities, infrastructure in transport and telecommunications, logistics, infrastructure in terms of the social services. So let's take, for example, if you have a good stadium, we can rotate Black Stars matches. For now, Black Stars matches are either played in Accra and Cape Coast. I remember a couple of years ago, we played in the Aliu Mahama Sports Stadium, that is in Tamale. We played a couple of matches in Isipon Stadium, for example. But because of issues of infrastructure and also lack of maintenance, today we can't go to Isipon to play, because some years ago, we were even told that Isipon didn't have a reliable power supply to the various, to the stadium. And the stadium, the way it was built, it has hotels, conferences, or other things there which are able to bring in return on investment. So these are some of the issues that bring to the fore the challenges, or let me say, some of the drawbacks that will come or will play up the run-up in the construction of this Olympic-sized stadium that we're going to build at Botima and all that. So we need the infrastructure first so that we can rotate these matches. So for example, if you take a Black Star game to Tamale, there should be the transport arrangement where people can travel from Accra and other areas. Once somebody travels from Accra and goes to Cape Coast or goes to Tamale, go to Techiman, goes to Isipon or Takrade, they will go and spend money there. They will sleep in hotels, they will eat, and that will boost tourism. So that one would have helped with the domestic tourism. Then we look at the big ticket events like the All African Games, the African Cup of Nations, the FIFA Youth Tournament, where we can bring in other people as well. Because as I said, every sporting activity brings about some kind of development in our infrastructure. And I've talked about how we even got the Accra International Conference Center. I mean, it was when in 1999, we were going to host the NAM conference. We thought it's expedient to build a conference center, and it has served us very well from that time to now. You understand? So, as I said, the bedrock of everything, of developing a sustainable sports tourism industry, is infrastructure, and also the plan by various associations to rotate some of these events from this town to the other town. By so doing, we will gradually develop all our infrastructure in the various towns and cities. Then it makes it easier for us to host major tournaments. So based on that, we could go and say, okay, we have a bidding committee who put in place a bidding document and say, okay, we can go and bid this particular sports tournament, and these are the direct return on investment that we're going to bring. So I think that we need to be quite, as I said, deliberate about some of the things we are doing, and not always don't, as we say, you don't have to look at the cost of everything, but let's look at what value it will bring to us.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. So I think you have 2 questions more, then we can wrap up. And so about 2 years ago, I was, trying to put together how we can have a sports tourism association, since there wasn't one in Ghana at the moment. So I wanted to ask, is there plans from maybe the government whereby there's a sports tourism association overseeing and contributing and putting together the stakeholders you mentioned about? So I'll start with Mr. Malcolm, since you have the.
Yeah, Oswell, I think we don't necessarily need an association. look, we have the various associations, the various industries. For example, when it comes to the tourism, that's what I'm familiar with. We have about over 20 trade associations. We have the Car Renters Association. We have the Traditional Food Caterers Association. We have Ghana Hotels Association. We have the Tour Operators Association. Then they all come under a big umbrella body called the Ghana Tourism Federation. That is GATOF. That is the mother association. And they are in constant touch with the regulator and ourselves and everything, and also with the ministry. They discuss all the issues. We have even Tour Guides Association, those guys who take us on various tours and give us all the information that we need. Then when it comes to the football, the sports side, as I said, we have the Ghana Football Association, we have the athletics, we have the volleyball, we have basketball, we have boxing, we have hockey, we have even the para sports and all those. So, I mean, they are there. You don't need to form an association. What we need to do is the constant collaboration and also the joining of efforts. As I said, I mean, we have a critical case of 2023 that is coming. I have not seen any deliberate engagement from any of the two sectors. That's why I say we have had discussions with our mother regulator, that is the Ghana Tourism Authority, about how we need, because now we need to be talking. How many beds, how many people are going to come into the country? We need to have all this analysis. Okay, pre-COVID, what numbers were we looking at? Post-COVID, what numbers are we going to look at? Do we have the number of beds in hotels? 2-star, 3-star, 4-star. If we're not going to get this, how many backpackers are going to come in that we will ensure that, okay, they will not sleep in hotels. They usually will sleep in either guest houses or 1-star hotels or even tents. How are we going to do that? We need to have that discussion. You don't need an association of both the two industries. Those of us here and those in the sports, we can have a discussion and plot our way forward. Then we'll bring on either relevant industries like telecoms, transport, food, and hospitality together so that we can both be on the same path and ensure that we give the very good experience to the people who are going to come. So I don't think there should be necessarily an association, but it's a collaboration of efforts and constant engagement for us to plot our way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Owuraku, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Malcolm has said it all. And we seem to have a lot of associations in Ghana and sometimes almost doing nothing. But what is really essential is to get the work done. And as I stated, and Mr. Malcolm has also emphasized on, we need to work together. In isolation, all these various associations are trying their best to be noticed. Or maybe the voice would be bigger if there was a platform for all of them to explain and talk through what really each sector needs to be able to improve and develop. So I think what we need is a platform to initiate these collaborations. Would there be meetings? Would there be conferences and all that? And I think that's the way going forward. But just also some clarity on Mr. Malcolm's point about the football journalist anger about the 25 million. So the truth is, everybody loves accountability. And if you are coming to put a football museum down and you say, this is what we need, this is what we expect to double our money in the next 2 years, I don't think anyone would question you. The problem is that this same Black Stars went to the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations, brought a budget, came back and never defended the budget fully. And then the minister is gone now. We never really heard how the money was spent. He came, he started, he fumbled, and that was it. We never had it. So there were question marks as to whether they really fully spent that whole budget or something happened to that money. We never had clarity. And then 2 years later, you've come back and you said that this time you need 25 million, a different minister. And we're like, no, that's not how things work. This is taxpayers' money. You need to tell them what you use the money for. And I think that's what channeled a lot of anger from people. So if there's accountability and it makes sense and it would benefit the country, I think everyone would buy it.
Thank you.
I think Owuraku has a point there. I mean, that's well noted.
Thank you. So I think one last question, just a brush up for one of the previous questions, one of the previous submission of Mr. Malcolm on maintenance. So if the steps to having our infrastructures maintained, how fast would we be able to come up with events and other events that will actually boost the tourism?
Also, I'll take the question again. I didn't get you from the beginning.
From your submission you mentioned about the infrastructure as having a maintenance of infrastructures. So if the steps are being taken to have them maintained and put up to scale, how best can we put up packages or how sport events come up to to boost the tourism industry?
Well, I think, you see, the issue with when it comes to maintenance is an issue. Maintenance is an issue. I mean, I've been to the Accra Sports Stadium a couple of times. I mean, you look at how, I mean, even we, the spectators who go to the stadium, how we even treat some of the chairs there. I mean, if you go even to the washroom, the Accra Sports Stadium washroom, I'm not talking about the popular stand or maybe the popular Adekoka stand. We're talking about VIP, the lower VIP. When you go to the washroom, sometimes you see the whole place and how dirty the place is and the urine is all over. I think the issue has to do with getting a very good template in terms of how sports infrastructure and also how infrastructure in general is maintained. For example, if you read some of the articles that came from the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, I mean, one of the key problems they saw was the lack of an anchor tenant or anchor tenant to maintain the stadiums. That's why they didn't get the right return. I mean, we have a lot of facility managers like Bro or some other entities who we can tax with the maintenance of some of these stadiums. I don't think the National Sports Authority, as is currently constituted and how it is run now, will be able to maintain any of this stadium. I mean, you can look at their track record in terms of the Sipon Stadium, the Cape Coast Stadium. I have been in Cape Coast. Usually, I mean, aside this tourism thing, I'm a football person as well. I am a football official for Pacific Heroes, which is a Division 1 league club. It used to be Dunkwa United. I mean, when we had a certain idea of how we want to manage the team or how we want to use the team in terms of football development. So we moved from Dunkwa, we went to Cape Coast, and we're playing our matches at the Cape Coast Stadium, and we now had to move to Agogo. So I know how some of this infrastructure and how they try to do. I mean, now we have some infrastructure with the AstroTurf. People have spoken about whether the AstroTurf is good for football development. I mean, the jury is still out there. I don't know, maybe Owuraku and his team will come out with some research work as to whether we have what it takes to, sorry, I think my screen, we have what it takes to maintain an AstroTurf and whether it helps in terms of football development. But I think that we need to come up with some template or some idea as to how, whether it's community ownership. For example, if we left the, hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you, yeah.
Okay, if we left the Aliu Mahama Sports Stadium to the Tamale Municipal Assembly or Metropolitan Authority or Assembly, would they be able to maintain it? I mean, we need, I don't know what to, because you need to put the stadium into a certain use over time, whether weekly, monthly, for you to generate enough for you to maintain the stadium. And for most of these new stadiums that we have, they have, let me say, guest rooms in the various, I mean, I have slept in the one in Cape Coast before, so I know what I'm talking about. Guest rooms that you can sleep. They have conference centers, they have pubs, they have some other event centers that you can use to generate enough, or maybe generate some amount that is desirable that you need to maintain those stadiums. So I think that if we're able to maintain this various infrastructure. I mean, for those of us who are in sports and in other sectors, we'll be able to come up with various events on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, because you see, these things have a ripple effect, what we call a multiplier effect in terms of economic terms. For example, the golf tournament we had recently, we had, I mean, on a micro scale, let me use this example. There's a kebab seller at the place. I mean, he sold almost to the tune of about 3,000 Ghana cedis. A kebab seller. I mean, so for that kebab seller, he wishes every day there's a golf tournament on a weekly basis that he can make that amount of money. You get me? This is just using a very micro example. So we need this infrastructure to go up, and they have their way of, for example, when you have this infrastructure there, you have people employed there in those maintaining it, cleaners, gardeners, landscape guys, and all those people. Then you have those who come there to do businesses, the food sellers, the drink people, the ice water people. So if we're able to maintain this infrastructure outputs or logistics, they have a way of paying back in terms of what they give to our society and also the economy at large in the various communities and cities.
Okay, thank you. Owuraku, anything you wanted to add?
Well, I think the need for maintenance has been glaring, especially in sports across infrastructure that we do have. But it's more of the mindset that we even need to develop, that once you build an infrastructure, it doesn't end there. You also need a proper plan in terms of how you would keep various aspects of the infrastructure fresh and up to speed and up to date. I take the Accra Sports Stadium as an example, and we've had various forms of renovations, but you see the level or the quality of the pitch, and I'm sorry to say, but it's just degraded as the years have gone on. And whenever it rains for just a couple of minutes, football matches cannot be played. And so we can have the conversation about sports tourism and all that, but it's really difficult. And you can see, a stadium such as the Accra Sports Stadium last season, where there were about 5 Ghana Premier League teams using it simultaneously, and then there were Division 1 teams using it as well. There is absolutely no way a stadium survives with that much stress, especially on the pitch. And that's how come the quality of the pitch has been just going down in the previous years and all that. So I think first of all, we need to mentally get there that if we're to embark on this journey where we would really invest a lot in sports tourism, generally when you look at a lot of budgets in Ghana, you don't see space allocated for renovations. It's always building the product and we're done, that's it. But there has to be some future thinking, estimating that a stadium would have faults in the next couple of years. What's the plan for that? Are we going to, push over some of the revenue into that as well? So it's something that is really important, especially because infrastructure really makes your tourism site. It's the experience that the person feels that makes the industry grow. Because if I come to the Accra Sports Stadium and I have an unpleasant experience, I'm going to tell 5, 10 other people that actually don't even bother going to stadium. It's stressful, it's not good, it's this, that. And you lose market there, someone else tells someone else, and they form a perception that the Accra Sports Stadium is not the best place to go on a weekend. And just like that, you lose market. And so it's really important to ensure that you enhance the experience and allow your stakeholders to enjoy themselves whenever they use your infrastructure. And that's the way that you grow, especially because this is a fresh industry that you're trying to build. Reviews are very important. And so renovations are something that should be heavily considered once these conversations are being generated.
Also, let me add a little bit to what Owuraku said. Let me give you a very practical example. As I said, I'm an official of Division 1 League Club. We play in Agogo, and the stadium the pitch we use belongs to a school, the Collins School. Now, when we went there, the pitch was in very bad state. So we tried to grow the grass. We got people to come and do everything. And now, I mean, Owuraku is very familiar. We play under the club licensing rules. So there are some guidelines that you're supposed to get inner perimeter, get a dressing room, get showers and everything there. I mean, you can imagine a Division 1 league club. We are supposed to be thinking about how our players are fed 3 times a day, how you pay them, their winning bonuses and salaries at the end of the month. You provide their sporting gear, football boots, jerseys, and all these things. When they are sick, you take them to the hospital. When they get injured, you take them to the hospital. And you're supposed to also be thinking about how a stadium that you play in is in the right condition for you to play. I mean, as I'm speaking now, there's a new directive from the club licensing that you are supposed to get, I think, wall across after the inner perimeter. We are supposed to get a certain height of fence wall to the various stadiums so that, I mean, to prevent fans from getting in and all that. I mean, how many of us Division 1 league clubs will be able to do this? I mean, in the first place, some of the stadiums we are playing in doesn't belong to us. And sometimes you have to fight with Division 2 teams as well as Sunday Stars and Monday Stars people. I mean, the day that you have a match, that morning is when they are coming to play. So you can't even do your markings and do your lines and all that. I mean, and after they've played, you can imagine the state of the pitch that you are going to play a Division 1 league match. You can imagine. So I think that these are some of the real issues, and I think government has to come in, because don't forget, Division 1 league clubs in this country are about 48. If each of us are having a squad of about 30, multiply 30 by the 48, you can imagine the amount of unemployment we have taken over from government. These are people that government would have ordinarily provided jobs for, or they would have found some social vices to engage in. So I think that both government and the communities needs to come together to see how best they can support some of these teams. Now we are playing Agogo. Agogo now has, we have an expletive. And I'm sure we are going to have a tussle with some of the community members and some of the teams, even to use the expletive. You understand? So the idea is that to be safer or to be able to have control over your matches or your stadium, you will need to either maybe look for money to go and construct your own little stadium. That ordinarily you would have used this money in the upkeep of your players, your technical team, and because we have a technical director who is Turkish. And since we joined this, since we got this team, we've always had, because of the development we have, idea we have, we always bring in foreign expatriates to come and help to develop the team. So these are real issues that has to do with the various sporting activities. So for example, how do you get somebody to go and watch a match on a pitch that has been used by 3 or 4 teams before you are coming to play a Division 1 league match? One, the game will not be good to watch. Even producing it on TV will even be worse. You understand? So these are real issues that we need that kind of collaboration, and also we need support from government as well as the various assemblies, district assemblies, to help in curbing.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. I think we've come to the end of the summit, but I'll take your final remarks, any final additions. I'll start with Mr. Malcolm.
Yeah, as I stated from the beginning, and what I think one very point I have re-emphasized in this morning's deliberations has been collaboration. I mean, we all have to know, or we have to understand that we are stakeholders in this sector. And the 3 of us who are on this virtual conference now are stakeholders. We need to identify those who are not here, especially those who are not, let me say, the telecoms provider, the communications people, the transport operators and owners, how we bring them. And the other ones maybe have not been able, the sports medicine people, the hospitals, the beverage, the food. We need to bring all those people together so that we have discussion. On our part, I'm sure we will start having that initial discussion with some of the stakeholders. And I mean, when the time is due, yourself and Owuraku will be invited for us to support. And I think from now going, Owuraku has to make a commitment that he's going to support this cause for us to get a desired results and outcomes. So that will be for us. So I mean, for me, it's about if there are three things I need to talk about: collaboration, collaboration, collaboration.
I do make that promise. I'll be here. If there's ever a need to, help push the agenda of sports tourism in Ghana. But my closing remarks are: whenever you want to create a product or create something new, the biggest barrier to entry is the market share and whether people are interested and would value that service. That, I think, is the biggest distraction or the biggest barrier. Now, we are privileged as a country to have that cleared, because as I stated earlier, Ghanaians are really interested in sports, anything to do with sports. There's so much stress that anything to do with sports would be hugely appreciated and quickly patronized. And so the market share is there. We have people who are interested, but they just want to see quality services. We've seen people go to stadiums and flood pitches in just 20 years ago. And so there is that possibility of seeing that again. However, the mammoth investments into infrastructure that would be required, I think, would be huge, but worth it long term. Definitely not a debate. Among the multitudes of examples of supporting developing sports tourism in Ghana and West Africa and the entire continent as a whole, I do think that it's more of deciding that this is what we're going to do and nothing is going to stop us. Because I do believe that, the same way government said that they want 25 million for football, and just this morning we saw Zenith give 500,000 CDs to football. If the government decides that they want $50 million to begin an agenda for sports tourism, we are going to see corporate bodies and individuals invest as well. And so I do think that we need that starting point. And if the industry grows, we're going to see the economy improve, people traveling in as well, and then various sectors benefit as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malcolm and Owuraku, for joining us today. Hopefully next year we'll have a much more of a physical event and maybe invite more people and have a much bigger discussion. So thank you from my side, and this is the end of the conference.
Okay, also, I think before I go, let me also say, like Owuraku said, Zenith Bank showed the way this morning by donating to us. I also want to thank our various sponsors that we've had over the years. I mean, golf is not, I'm a football person, but finding myself in this space, we decided to use golf as a sports tourism avenue, or as a sporting avenue to get people within the tourism space to come out. And I think that I'm happy. This year we had UMB as the headline sponsor for Center of the World Golf Tournament. We had UMB, MTN, Japan Motors. We had the Farmers Market, Labadi Beach Hotel, Accra City Hotel. Then we also had the Ghana Tourism Authority, as well as the Beyond the Return Secretariat. So we're grateful to them, and as well as Hollard Insurance. We're grateful to them for believing in an idea. A company like Japan Motors has been with us from the very beginning. SIC, Ghana Free Zones Board, or Free Zones Authority, they have been with us. So we're grateful to all of them. I think these are companies that we need to encourage for believing in such idea that starts very small and they grow to become big. So thank you so much.
So we sign off now, and thank you for our viewers for watching, and there'll be a recorded version on YouTube by the end of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you.